Hey everyone, it's Kaylin with Stagecoach Equity and Management, and today I wanted to talk about the 10 questions you should ask before hiring a property manager. So the first question is, how many units do you currently manage? And this is important because you typically want to see a property manager manage about 100 to 150 units before they need to hire other people. So if they're managing about 1,000 units, you want to see somewhere between 7 and 10 people working for them. The second question you want to ask is, what areas do you currently service? And why this is important is because for larger places like Houston, there's lots of submarkets where they need to make sure they're experts in that market specifically. For example, you don't want someone who says they manage in Houston and you have properties out in Baytown. Because Baytown is such a different market from Houston itself, you want to make sure that that person understands how long vacancies are typically on the market there, what the average price is, just the tenants in general. There's usually a different tenant base based on submarkets, so you want to make sure that they specialize in that market. So the third question you want to ask is, what strategies do you use to fill vacancies? There's a couple different ways to go with this. One, you want to know what type of online marketing they do. So typically the software that your property manager uses will allow that software to source out to other websites. The one we use sources out to about 80 different websites such as Zillow, Realtor, HotPads, basically any website you can find apartments or single families on. You can also do paid marketing with this. So for our larger complexes, we have contracts with Zillow and the major websites in the market to make sure that we have a driving force on their website. You also want to make sure you're listed on the multiple listing system. So we use HAR, and we make sure that even our larger complexes have a unit listed on the MLS so that we're just getting more exposure, because some people only use the MLS. They won't go to Zillow or Realtor because they know they can't necessarily believe all the information they find on there. You also want to make sure your property manager is using other things such as Facebook. We use Facebook Marketplace, and that brings us a ton of different leads. I would say on average we get between 30 and 40 leads on each vacancy. You also want to make sure that your people who are filling your vacancies are up to date on their sales training. So we're constantly trying to improve ourselves, reading books, listening to podcasts, and just testing new things to try and get people to move into our units. So again, it's just about testing new things constantly, such as offering concessions, giving a free TV, maybe giving someone half off first month's rent. You just want to make sure you're offering different things to try and see what works best for your market. The next big question to ask is, what are your management fees? So you want to know if it's a flat fee or a percentage fee. And then you also want to make sure you're aware of any other fees that your management company might charge you, such as staffing, onboarding, maybe any concierge fees, any admin fees. There's just a lot of different things that you don't know about that you don't want to be blindsided by your first month when you go to pay your management company. And then the fifth question is, how do you split your fees? So other than management fees, there's late fees, application fees, pet fees, amenity fees, and you want to know, does the management team take all of that, or do you get some of it too as an owner? And this is important because it incentivizes both parties. So for example, like on lease renewals, if you get charged a $250 fee, it's a great incentive for your management company to want to keep your tenants in the property. The sixth question to ask your property manager is, how do you screen tenants? You want to make sure they're using a software to run a credit and background check. So we look for monthly income 3 times the rent, credit score above 550 for most of our properties. Some of them we look for a little bit higher, and then no previous felonies or evictions. So depending on what type of property you have, if it's lower income or if it's more of a luxurious property, your standards are going to differ a little bit. But what we found has been really successful with our lower income properties are offering a high risk management fee, which is just it's a forfeited deposit when the tenant moves in, that they understand they're not going to get that money back. And sometimes we'll even offer a double deposit instead. It's also really important to verify that your property manager is actually calling the previous employer or the employer and the previous landlords to verify that these people aren't lying on their application, because sometimes that happens. There's actually a template that you can get online for pay stubs, and the tenant can just go put in whatever employer they want, whatever amount of money. So you want to make sure you're calling their employer and verifying that they actually do work there. Okay, question number 7 is, what is your current vacancy lead time and lease renewal rate? Vacancy lead time means the time from the time that the previous tenant moves out to when the new tenant moves in. The typical time in Houston is 40 days, I believe, so you want to make sure your property manager is slightly under that. Obviously, the lower the better, more money it saves you. And then lease renewal rates, I believe they're about 55% nationwide. This also differs a lot based on if you have single families or multifamilies. People tend to stay longer in a single family than they do multifamily, so that can also change the management company's average lease renewal rate too. The 8th question is, how do you handle maintenance? When we switched to in-house maintenance, we noticed we were saving owners about 15 to 20%, and we also had happier tenants. We were able to get the jobs done quicker, and now our tenants know most of our maintenance techs and they're just satisfied with their work versus having to wait for a vendor to come in. And like I said, it's also just benefited our owners more because usually vendors have such a standard price that they charge when they come in just to do a diagnostic. So being able to take that in-house has just made a huge difference for our owners. The 9th question is, do you personally invest in real estate? And I find this important because you want to make sure that the people who are managing your properties are looking for the revenue increases and the decrease in expenses that you would be looking for too. People are usually just more incentivized when they own their own properties because they understand how much this can benefit you from a revenue standpoint each month, when they can recognize that you need more parking space, or maybe if you just upgraded the units a little more, you could bring in more revenue. So I think it's really important to work with people who are investing themselves. Okay, and then the last question is, what reports do I get and how often do I receive them? So if you have a management company that is sending out what we call owner statements, or basically a month-end P&L, it makes it so much easier for your bookkeeper to do the books at the end of the year and just for you to have a clean slate and be able to do your taxes really easily. You also want to make sure you're getting reports on vacancies and getting all the info you can as far as how many leads you're getting, how many showings you're having, and how many of those showings are turning into applications. Just make sure you ask your property manager what types of reports they give and how often they send them. So those are the 10 questions I recommend asking your property manager. And it's also important to recognize that not everybody's going to be a good fit for everybody. So make sure you're working with someone who plays to your strengths and someone that you speak the same language with. If you're a numbers person, you're going to want someone who understands the numbers better. And if you're more about relationships, you're going to want someone who takes maybe better care of your tenants. So just make sure it's a good fit for everybody. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will see you next time. Thanks.